The week has finally arrived where Pokeballs flood the scene and the Switch gets a new star. We've got the first ever console Pokemon descending this coming Friday in the form of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. We've got beautiful new Joy-Con, a brand new bundle, and 2 new games that in theory should take this system by storm. Today we're going to give you our pre-release hype, our pre-release expectations, what we're most excited for, what we're worried about, and how we think this game shifts the landscape for Nintendo Switch.
Yes, Zach, we've had Pokemon games on console in the past, but never like this. Never a RPG, never the handheld experience that we had as kids, quite literally, being brought to life in a 3D fashion in a very beautiful art style that I've come to love quite a bit, even though I was worried when I first saw it. I've come to really appreciate it visually, and especially after getting our hands on with it and in person. I'm all for it stylistically. I'm excited, Zach. This is going to bring back so many memories. I've even thought about going and playing on the same park bench where I played Yellow when I was a kid. That was a thought I had, no lie.
Oh, that's a beautiful moment. You can go 20 years back into the past, and I'm glad that you just remember the bench and can actually still find it. I don't even know where the heck I was
Zach,
20 years ago.
it's down the street. I've been living in the same 1 mile radius for my entire life.
You have been a Kanto region lifer in the real world. That's very impressive. No, I think this game is going to be a lot of fun. I think, as I've stated, the best part of Pokemon Let's Go is that it is the full realization of the be a trainer fantasy. You've got the Pokeball that feels good and can control the game. You can bring friends in. The Pokemon follow you around. You've got your partner. It looks smashing on the Switch. And I was thinking about this just the past couple days, okay, letting it sink in that, yeah, a lot of people are going to play this game on the go. They're going to take it handheld and be able to replicate the Pokemon adventures they've had for the last few decades. But it really will be something to sit on your couch, maybe with a significant other or just a friend, and play this Pokemon game from the comforts of your couch and on a big screen TV.
Zach, another thing, you've almost touched on what one of my worries here, and just so quickly. Since this game is so Joy-Con heavy, I don't want to be flinging my Switch. If you're playing exclusively in handheld and not in tabletop with a single Joy-Con, that's something that does worry me. But yeah, you're right. Playing this from home, for us, it's not going to be a couch. It's going to be a chair here in our office because that's just how we do things to record stuff for you guys. But if I was the type of gamer to play stuff from my couch, that's going to be an exciting prospect to be able to play Pokemon from home. And not have to take it on the go.
It's just such a different experience, and one that I think has sort of faded in the background because of the discussion of is this the Pokemon we want? Is this the Pokemon it should be? Is it going to be exciting? Is it for us? Who's it for? Who's it not for? We're going to find out real soon. I want to touch on how we think this thing is going to sell, in spite of the fact that there have been a lot of worries and concerns, in spite of the fact that we know there's a new Pokemon game coming in 2019. I still think this thing is the star of the Switch's year, and goes gangbusters. Given 2 SKUs, if you combine them together, I think that's fair. This one, I do think, because of the Pokemon name, because of the first time on console, and just because of the Switch, the bundle, the audience that it is trying to acquire, it's gonna go gangbusters.
I've never really had any doubts about it selling, even though we see people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to get this. It's, too, beginner friendly, and this one isn't for me. Next year's is for me, so I'm going to get that one, not this one." I think it's going to be too hard for people to resist. I feel like if you're a fan of Pokemon, you're going to get it eventually. Maybe you don't get it right away. Maybe it sells a little softer than usual, in the beginning, but I feel like that's something that is gonna be so hard to ignore, especially once you see all the tweets and the posts and YouTube videos about people completing their Pokedex and starting on the post game stuff eventually, all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be so hard to ignore, I feel for hardcore Pokemon fans, right?
Yeah, I think Pokemon is the type of game that sells regardless. I think you can say what you want beforehand, but if you are a Nintendo fan, if you are a Switch gamer waiting for the next big thing, this is kind of it. And I think it also helps Pokemon's case that there hasn't been a whole lot lately, so the anticipation is really high. Obviously, Smash Bros. Is out there, but that's still another month away, and it'll be real interesting to see how those games compare sales-wise. But yeah, I think Pokemon does do great, and I think it does great right out the gates. I don't think this is something that is going to see any sort of significant slowdown. And review-wise, I still expect it to review well. I know it's not delivering the traditional hardcore, what they would want, that those traditionalists would want. But at the same time, it is tying into a wave that I think can still be ridden. The Pokemon Go wave, the Switch wave, sort of the new era gamer wave. And so I still think this thing, maybe it's not, one of the best, but I think it still rides an 8 to 8.5 for review score Metacritic range.
And despite what the reviews are, I feel like this is almost review proof. The fan base is like so strong here. And people, you mentioned Let's Go, and like, not that there's a super like direct tie-in, and Nintendo wants there to be, but one game free on your phone, the other one you're going to have at the very bare minimum a $360 investment to play. So do fans that only played Pokemon Go, get a Switch just for Pokemon? Like, did they love it that much? Like, probably not, but I feel like the crossover there is going to be like so crazy that maybe people that were like lapsed fans of Pokemon really got into it again through Pokemon Go, and they also just happen to be gamers, and like you said, it'll do well. But yeah, I think this thing's gonna be review proof. You said like an 8.5. That feels about right to me. I don't foresee it getting anything higher, just because I feel like the one thing against the game is it's super friendly. And it's not the experience people were excited for, so maybe some people like dock a couple of points for that. But I'm right there. I'm right there with you. Anywhere from like 7.5 to 8.5. That's what I'm thinking is gonna happen. Maybe there's like way more surprises in store, and we get some like really, really positive review scores from certain places. But yeah, I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, outside of a complete pivot or a dramatic shift, yeah, this is tapping back into Pokemon Yellow. But if it was a new Pokemon in the same vein of what we've seen recently with X and Y and Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, call me slightly jaded on that front, but it's Pokemon, right? So how do you like if the product is good, it seems like it's hard to sort of get out of that range. Like, it's not going to fall really low, and it's probably not going to rank really, really high. It just kind of is going to settle at a very solid score that, as you mentioned, is kind of, regardless, it's going to sell like crazy. So for us personally, what we're most excited for, what we're most worried about, I'll kick it off. I think what I'm most excited for is to visit these gyms in their new visual flair. I want to see what all of the leaders, their Pokemon, and then the spaces themselves look like in this beautiful new art style. I want to go check out Sabrina. I want to check out Blaine. I want to see how they're all doing and what they got going on. I think what they've shown of Barack and his gym, of Misty and her gym, Lieutenant Surge, like, they're very cool, and I like how they've designed them. And to me, there is so much cartoon tie-in here, right? So much of like, elements from the show are sort of being now pumped into the game because the visuals are closer. Like, living that experience will be very nostalgic, will be very fun, and hopefully a little bit fresh, just from the standpoint, it looks more dynamic than it has ever before.
For me, the one thing I'm most excited for, and maybe them going back to Yellow is like a perfect fit for me, and maybe I'm the target audience here, where I'm a little bit more of a lapsed Pokemon fan, where the last few generations I didn't partake in very much. So this is going to bring me back to a set of Pokemon that I'm very familiar with, that I'm very comfortable with, and I feel after playing Let's Go, I might just go back and like touch on the stuff I've missed, and it might bring me back into the fold. I have to get ready for next gen, because that's coming next year. We're pretty aware of that. So Let's Go just introducing me back into the world of Pokemon, collecting every single one here. You start with a very manageable roster. You don't have to have like the 700 plus, 800 plus Pokemon that there are if you want a full Pokedex, but just easing back into that. And yes, like, there's not going to be like wall battles and stuff like that, but so many of the cool moments that were in Yellow, they're still going to be here in some fashion, and I'm excited to see how that happens.
Absolutely. I'm also pretty pumped to just try it co-op. I know that that's going to, lower the difficulty even more, and it's not going to be the hardcore experience that a lot of fans are hurting for at this point, but I'm still pumped to see what that's like, to try it out. And I think just in the 2018 era, with the better graphics on Switch home console, it's fitting that it does have multiplayer. It'll be really great to just venture out with my girlfriend and see what that is like, build our teams, kind of compete, see who's going to keep what kind of Pokemon, and then go crush the competition. The difficulty in general is something that I'm very curious about, like how I feel personally. I know a lot of fans who do the whole
Nuzlocke.
The whole, yeah, all of that stuff. The whole 360-degree Pokemon experience where they're diving so deep and just stat farming these guys. Like, that's not me. So how I feel about the difficulty, I'm very intrigued to see. And then, there have been some data mines recently, so I don't want to get into everything. But the post game, how quickly I can get there, and then the master trainers. I don't think I'll go for all of them, but I still think that could be a fun challenge and definitely something that really fits into sort of like this era of like live streaming. I can see a bunch of people trying to race through those master trainers or how many they can get through and creating their own challenges that way. So that's one thing I'm excited community-wise to see how people sort of react to that, respond to that, and what they create out of that end game content.
Yeah, people are still going to figure out a way to make this as hardcore an experience as possible. Like, there is going to be some weird like Nuzlocke stuff going on, and it doesn't seem like the game is as closed off as we originally thought, as far as like the gym battles having restrictions and making sure that you have a certain type of enemy or stuff like that. It sounds like you're forced to have it to go into the gym, but then after that you can like change and do your own thing, and you could just like not use them. We've talked about that stuff before, so I won't get into it too much, but the community is going to be a big part of what makes this game exciting for me. I want to see what every little difficult thing that they add, the hardcore community here, and the way that they make the game more interesting and fun to them, because I always have a good time with that.
Absolutely. And then lastly for me is what it means for the future. What elements of this seem really cool? What stylistic choices do I want them to continue? And maybe what things pop up as I'm playing it at home, as I'm playing it in through this new form factor, as I'm enjoying the co-op and experiencing what they've got going on with this yellow reimagining, and then forming a list for like, okay, here's what I really hope they tackle and try to do next year. And just kind of that lead up will be interesting. How much they distance it from Let's Go, how very different it does feel, or if it just kind of feels like an evolution of what we already have. I'm excited about that. In terms of the downside, the worries, the concerns, and what might be going wrong here, I do worry personally that because the Pokemon are so known, as someone who's not a big rewatcher, who's not a big replayer, I'm nervous that it might be a little boring given that I know everything that's coming. And even though it's been a long time, Meltan and Melmetal not doing a whole ton for me.
See, I don't have that problem. I like experiencing things more than once, as you know, just like in the media we consume, where I'll watch or listen to something a million times that you're like, no, I'll experience it once and then I'm good. So I don't have that problem. For me, the thing that I worry about, and it's barely a worry because I've come to terms with it, is like, hey, like, just how friendly will this be? Zach, I have little cousins and nephews that come over sometimes, and they're very, very young. They're like 4 years old.
Right.
Like, I wonder if this is something they could do. Like, what happens if I hand them a Joy-Con? Or I've even been thinking about getting a Pokeball Plus once again. I flip-flopped just to see, like, how do these kids react to like something like this? Maybe I hand them the Switch and they don't want to hand it back, and I get robbed by a 4-year-old, Zach.
I mean, I think that's Nintendo's plan. They want this to be approachable by even that audience, and the scenario you set up of sort of guiding a new gamer into this franchise, I think, is basically the whole point of Let's Go, at least from Nintendo's perspective. So you are living Reggie's plan, Gabe. You're perfectly following his master agenda.
Oh, man. Zach, I fell for it. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you've been baited by Reggie and his Let's Go Lucky Charms. I think also there is a concern that Nintendo and the Switch seem like they need super strong games right now. And if this does, I don't personally think it will, but if it does have sort of a softer launch and the response is tepid, is it going to be like, yeesh, that was a real rough second half of the year for the Switch? And yeah, we still have Smash Bros. Ultimate, which I'm sure will be Ultimate, but it would paint a pretty rough picture, I think, if this goes down as something that the core fan base and the core Switch ownership ends up not liking.
You've also touched on to another thing that's a little bit worrying for me, is if this was like amazing, like,
ooh, that too, yeah.
Yeah.
The inverse, yeah.
Yeah, like, does this become something we get way more often? Do we get like a Pokemon Let's Go version of every generation of Pokemon? Like, if these things do way better than any Pokemon ever, like, Nintendo has no choice but to say like, hey, that aspect, and the way we marketed that towards like a super wide audience, we made it more beginner friendly. Like that works, so do it again. So that's something I fear. I have no fear of that for next year. I think next year is going to be a little bit more of a core experience. But if this ends up being like amazing as far as sales goes, that might be a little bit worrisome.
Right, and they have talked about that. Hey, they're open to the idea of spinning this off into a separate thing, and I think separate is a great word, because if they we're talking about, we don't know, like you said, we've got sort of the groundwork laid for the next steps for Pokemon in the franchise, so we know we're safe there. The idea of spinning this off, if it is insanely successful, great, that sounds good to me, but I don't think we're really at risk of like, this is going to turn things down a very noob-friendly and just unappealing way for Pokemon, but it'll be for sure interesting to see. I think a couple other things that we want to touch on here are, what does this game do for Switch? Do you think that if a console gets a Pokemon game, in theory that like instantly ups the value of that console so much? Because this is Let's Go, because this has some of the caveats that we've discussed over the year, does this also add that much value to Nintendo Switch?
Yes and no. I feel like the only reason it adds that much more value is the inherent hardcoreness of these Pokemon fans, and they'll go buy a system just for Pokemon. And if they maybe feel like, hey, like this one, it might not be for me, so they have no incentive to go buy that system that they wouldn't have otherwise had. I feel like it's going to be a small percentage. Like I don't think there's a ton of people that specifically buy brand new systems only for Pokemon. But when you're redesigning, let's say a 3DS for like the 4th time, and this one just happens to have a Pikachu like faceplate, like, and you go purchase that just because you love Pokemon so much, like I feel like that might be lost with these. But like you said, having a Pokemon game on your console is automatically gonna like it's gonna go up in stock. It has to,
for sure. I don't think that if this was Gen 8, I think it turns the system a little bit faster, but still you got Pokemon, as you mentioned, you got the characters, you got the excitement, and you have again another notch on the Switch game library that says, okay, we've got Mario Kart, 3D Mario, big 3D Zelda, we've got multiplayer fun in Splatoon and Mario Tennis Aces, and we got the big RPGs and Xenoblade. It just adds again to that, and once we get Smash, it rounds out with a really I would say wealth providing lineup that you get in there, and there's just riches of game experiences for the Nintendo fan base. I do think this elevates things. I think that next year maybe elevates it more, but they are laying the groundwork, and that can't be a negative. What Pokemon game do you got to get? The game comes out in, I don't know, 72, 96 hours, something like that from now. What Pokemon are you hunting for as fast as you can?
For me, it's gonna look. I'm getting Eevee. Let's Go Eevee is the one I'm going to be getting, and
right.
And although I know
the wrong choice, but it's okay.
Although I know my starter Pokemon is not going to ever change, I want to catch a few more Eevee because Zach, I love all the evolutions. I really do. They're so cool. How could you not say that if you're a fan of Eevee, like I happen to be? Besides that, though, just because those are like a little obvious. I don't know, maybe I'll find a Pikachu out there just so I can pretend maybe I have Let's Go Pikachu just so I can see him following me. He's not going to be...
In case you did make the wrong choice, you want
No, I'm not making... I'm confident I'm making the right choice.
Okay.
I want to try to fill out the Pokédex. It seems like it's going to be doable for me.
Yeah, I mean, you got to count. You can tell what it is. For me, as a big Fire Pokemon fan, I am definitely going to be hunting for something that can bring the flames. I would like to pick up also a Starmie. I have a soft spot for Starmie. I'm not quite sure why. I always have. And this gives me a chance to sort of forget about the new faces that I love and kind of go back old school. So my final two, just because I'm giving you a bunch here, Poliwrath was my first ever Pokemon card holographic in my first booster pack, so that is a must for me. And then I love Gengar. Haunter to Gengar.
Yeah.
The whole trio, actually. Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar. Like, getting back to those OG designs and those OG just... It really does take you back, and I think... I'm not usually susceptible to this stuff, but I'm hoping that this time around, instead of boredom, I'll be met with just good tingly vibes.
The thing is, there's like so many like really awesome Pokemon. Like a Magnemite, I really liked, and Magneton, like being the evolution, like those to me like were like really cool. I also like Onix. I want to ride that giant Onix around the world, like to just traveling in them, like in the trailers. That's like really cool. So I also want the Alolan version of Executor. I also want that, Zach. That
Ooh,
giant.
I forgot that there are some Alolan types. In
yeah,
this,
the giant
this game.
The giant neck just like filling the screen. Like to me, that's just comical. So I also wanted to partake in that a little bit. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, because I want to get through it so quickly. Because like Smash is coming. I don't want this to be an experience that I drag on. So I'm gonna like try to power through so much of this game.
Yeah. Get Team Rocket on their butts before you know it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be cool as well, just seeing Team Rocket. We didn't mention that yet, but because, like, I don't know, I have zero affinity for Team Skull or Team whatever the heck they've had. There's been so many teams, but Team Rocket is the one that counts. I mean, I have a shirt that bears the Team Rocket legendary trio, so that will be fun to see. I think all in all, it's going to be a really good week, and I'm really excited to, I think mostly like see like the community reaction. I think both of us are pretty pumped for that. So let us know how you're feeling, Mr. and Mrs. Community, in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch and Pokemon Let's Go, both versions, Eevee and Pikachu. We'll have you covered with a lot of content, as well as an unboxing of that very sacred and beautiful new set of Joy-Con, new dock, and real aggressive backplate art that I'm super pumped to see in person, because the Smash one blew me away. And I hope that this can do the same. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Discord. We'll probably be posting when the content's coming, when we're streaming, when we're showcasing, and you'll want to know when that happens. So check those links. And for myself and Gabe, have a fantastic week. It's a big one, and we're ready for it. So until then, thanks again. SwitchForce out.